Prisoners is a film that I have had on my radar for a very long time, probably since it came out, but somehow I've just never seen it. My wife wanted to rewatch this movie and recommended it to me, so we checked it out together. It's a Denis Villeneuve film, and I've only seen a handful of his movies. I'm a huge fan of Sicario, so I actually didn't realize this was one of his movies until the credits started rolling, and I said, "Oh wow, that's why that was so good." But this movie, if you're not familiar, is about two Pennsylvania families where their daughters get kidnapped, and they take extreme measures to find out what happened to their daughters. And it has a lot of parallels actually to I Saw the Devil, which I watched a couple of weeks ago. I think this would make a good double feature, Prisoners and I Saw the Devil. I really enjoyed Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in particular in this movie, and I think I would list him as probably in my top five male actors. I think he's great in pretty much everything that he's in. And of course, Hugh Jackman has a great performance in this as well. I think the whole movie is good, and I rated it highly. I recommend it. Next, The Dancing Monkey. I watched this movie because J.G. Smith is in it. She was in Knives and Skin, a movie that I reviewed a couple weeks ago. The Dancing Monkey is based on a play, which is something that I suspected as I was watching it because it's a very short movie. It's only about an hour and 12 minutes, I think. And the entire movie is just a series of scenes of people talking to each other. There's not a lot of action, but there is a lot of dialogue. And it's about a man who works at a cardboard factory that the owners want to automate it and the workers want to unionize. And he's actually the deciding vote that will push the factory in one direction or another generally. I think this movie is pretty political, but it does a good job of showing kind of both sides of labor, of being a worker, of being a person who works at a job, a physical job especially. And I actually really liked it. In fact, I would say the J.G. Smith character, she plays a democratic socialist, and her buddy are having a meeting of democratic socialists, and the joke is that when our main character goes to the meeting to kind of find out what these people are all about, there's nobody there except the two people running the show. So the three of them have quite an interesting conversation, and I feel like they, even though I'm not a fan of these kinds of ideas, the democratic socialists could have been played off a little bit more seriously. They kind of say corny, jokey things to each other, and it's hard to explain without quoting it directly, but they could have been taken more seriously, which is an odd thing for me to say, is something that somebody doesn't agree with that side of the fence at all. But it was a good movie. I actually really liked it. About Time is one of those rare films where, man, I just was loving every minute of it from start to finish. I couldn't believe what a good movie this was. And I think it's one of those instant classics. It went in, I would probably call it one of my top 10 favorite films of all time, even though I've only seen it once a couple days ago. I do want to rewatch it, but I think about it every day, so I don't want to rush into a rewatch. And this was recommended by a coworker of mine. We were having a kind of Valentine's Day virtual happy hour at work, and on the call, the office hadn't logged in yet, so I was asking some of my remote working friends, what are some of your favorite romantic movies, because I really like movies and I want recommendations. So somebody said About Time, and I said, oh, is that the one with Justin Timberlake where he has a clock in his arm? And she said, no, that's In Time. I'm talking about Time. So I said, I looked it up real quick, and I said, I think I have this on DVD. And it actually was in my third overflow area, which is my attic. So I have a huge box of DVDs in my attic that is just remote overflow, right? So I had to go all the way up in the attic to look for this thing. I found it, I watched it, and again, I adored this movie. It is about a family who they have a thing with the men in the family who they can travel time. And I know that sounds corny, but the way it's treated is kind of not science fiction-y. It's just kind of matter-of-factly brought into the story, and it's used throughout the story by our main character in quirky and inventive ways. But that's not really what the story is about, except for to kind of teach the lesson of appreciating the things that are in your life in real time every day. And it has Rachel McAdams in it. The main character is played by Donald Gleason, and Bill Nighy's in it as his father. And it's just great. I love it. I adore it. Everything about it is perfect. I can't wait to watch it again. And I really appreciate the person who recommended this to me at work. We actually got on a one-on-one and talked about it after I watched it. And it was really cool nerding out with somebody about a movie like this. So highly recommend. Check it out. I need to get it on Blu-ray now because I want to upgrade from that DVD, which is now on the main shelf. It graduated from the attic to the main shelf. Also, I want to see more movies like this. So if you've seen About Time, I liked that it was pro-family, it was pro-natal, it was just a nice movie with nice people being nice to each other. I want to see more movies like this, and I would love to see a movie like this one, but set in the US, because this was set in England. So that's not a knock against the film. I don't care that it was set in England. I would love to see a movie that's just like this, though, set in the States. Next, we're going to take a step down in quality here. This movie called Condemned is a strange horror movie that I had on Blu-ray that I got off of Hamilton Book, and it's a cool idea. It's about a New York a building that is condemned, but people squat there illegally, right? So our main character is the girlfriend of a guy who's in a band, and she goes to see his band, and they crash in this condemned building for the night, and that's the movie kind of kicks off from there. The thing about the movie is the characters in it are colorful and varied, as you would imagine from a bunch of squatters in a condemned building. I gave it 3 stars, but it's a really gross and unsettling movie, and some people like that. Like, people love Evil Dead, and people love movies like Bad Taste, all these Sam Raimi movies from back in the day, because they're so gross and strange. This movie is like that, but I didn't really like it enough to keep it on my shelf. And one of the things that pushed me to push it out of the collection is that I read up on the production of this movie, and apparently, let's just say there were people who worked on this movie that were accused of doing bad things to each other, allegedly. And a lot of the people who worked on this film said it was one of the worst experiences of their lives. So I was like, I didn't like this movie enough to keep it, so I put that in my eBay pile. Next, we have Flatliners, which is kind of a classic. I've never seen it before, or I can't remember if I've seen it, but I do have a memory of my parents going out to see this movie and then coming home and telling me that I could never see it, which is kind of strange because I grew up watching all kinds of horror movies. I'm one of those 80s kids who was watching Friday the 13th when he was 10 years old, like those kind of, I watched all kinds of horror movies when I was a kid, but for some reason they told me I couldn't watch Flatliners. And I don't know why. Maybe it was just because of the themes of trying to die and escape death and come back to life is a little bit deeper than just a guy with a hockey mask swinging a machete at people. But I finally got around to, I picked up the Arrow Blu-ray of this, which is a really nice addition. And I watched the movie and I really liked it. I thought it was great. It's kind of it's funny, the commentary on the Blu-ray said this is kind of a Brat Pack adjacent movie because of the ensemble cast. And even, I think Kiefer had some funny quotes about how the movie is St. Elmo's dying or something. Like, he made some quips about how it's like a Brat Pack movie where everybody dies. And yet, as this commentator noted, nobody dies in the movie. So that's kind of interesting as well. This movie is so colorful and so beautifully like gothic in all the architecture. They really went out of their way to make the movie look beautiful, and it does get dreamy, it gets surreal. And there are scary parts. I was talking to a friend of mine who said, "Oh, I remember that movie being really scary when I was a kid." So it was kind of scary. So that's Flatliners. Next, we have The Black Door, which is even more scary. Now, this movie is kind of a found footage mockumentary. I got it off Twitter. Somebody posted it and said, "Hey, the only edition of this movie is a Spanish DVD or something like that." This movie is in English, so no subtitles needed. It's about a dude who's doing his college thesis on this business magnate from Mexico who lived in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, and he discovers that the guy was involved in the occult, and he finds this 8mm film of occult ritual, and when he watches it, things start to happen to him. And this flick is really good, and it's really funny and coincidental that I happen to be playing a video game called Silent Hill Shattered Memories, because some of the acting in this movie is really video gamey. If you look at the reviews on Letterboxd, people say like, this is the greatest PS1 game I've ever seen. Now, I wouldn't knock it that hard. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really good, really unsettling. But it's funny how I'm playing a Silent Hill game on the Wii, and the acting is very similar to the acting in The Black Door. So I recommend this one if you can go on Twitter and dig it up like I did, and you'll enjoy it. My only annoyance with this is that it wasn't in the right format, even though it's 4:3 aspect ratio. It wasn't in the right format for me to watch it on my CRT TV without doing a bunch of extra work. So I watched it on a flat screen TV, but I want to find a way to watch it again on my CRT. Next is We Summon Darkness, a movie I didn't really like and don't really recommend. It's kind of about the satanic panic in the 80s with the heavy metal scene. It stars Alexandria Daddario, which will help any movie if she's in it. But unfortunately, the story doesn't really make sense. The characters are not likable, like any of them, even the victims, and the way it ties up at the end is not satisfying. Also, it's a movie about heavy metal, and it's set in the 80s, but you could tell they couldn't afford to license any music. In fact, the only songs you'll recognize are used towards the end, and they are pop songs, which are cover versions, so they're not even the real songs by the actual artists. So I don't think this movie was hatefully or cynically made. I think they tried to make a good movie, but it just didn't really come together. I don't really recommend that one. Next is The Hill. This is a feel-good movie, an inspirational, very heavily Christian-themed movie about Ricky Hill, who was a young baseball player from Texas who had a degenerative spine disease, and he wanted to play Major League Baseball, and this is his story. And in real life, he actually made it to the minors. He played for the Expos Farm League for 4 years until he was actually badly injured on the field and had to retire from baseball. Having said all that, it's still a good movie. Now, this one, unlike About Time, which feels realistic, feels like people you'd want to hang out with, feels like relatable. The Hill, to me, did not feel like super relatable, even though it's very nice and inspirational. The struggles come from this family in the 60s and 70s where their preacher father doesn't want his son to play baseball. He thinks he would be ignoring his higher calling to become a preacher like him. So that's your conflict in this movie. Dennis Quaid plays the father. And again, some of the Letterboxd reviews are very unkind to this movie, but just know you're getting into a feel-good, inspirational Christian type of movie, and you might enjoy it, especially if you like baseball movies. Next is Battles Without Honor and Humanity. And this is another Kinji Fukusatsu movie. I watched Legend of the Eight Samurai a couple weeks ago, and that was my first exposure to Kinji Fukusatsu. I had a couple of these flicks on the single Arrow Blu-rays, but it's a 5-movie series, and I only had the last 3 movies. So I reached out to Will Gish on Twitter because he was tweeting about this film series because he's a huge Kinji Fukusatsu fan. And I said, hey man, can you start with the 3rd movie, or do you need to see all 5 in a row to understand it? And he very kindly responded to me and advised me to spend more money on more Blu-rays because I needed to see the first 2 movies and see all the movies in the series. So I did that. I am trying to sell the 3 individual movies, and I bought the box set of all 5 movies. And I started with the first movie. These movies are Yakuza films. They get lumped in with The Godfather. People call it like the Japanese Godfather. But in the same way that calling the Yakuza series of video games Japanese Grand Theft Auto, it doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't do it justice. This is post-war Japan, the saga of these Yakuza families growing, fighting with each other, fighting with the government, going to jail, all this stuff. And the one thing I can tell you about this movie is that it is so chaotic. It is absolute mayhem from start to finish, with very few areas of quiet or being able to take a breath or even think, to the point where I have to admit that I kind of lost track of what was even going on. And I feel like I need to watch this movie again for a refresher, maybe taking notes before I move on to the next one. But having said that, it was really good. It's only 88 minutes long, and it's just a riot from start to finish. There's always action and craziness going on screen, whether it's fights, gunfights, battles, assassinations, anything you can think of. And I mean, I really liked it, but I got to watch it again. But I'm looking forward to going through the whole series. Last, we have Mandy. I watched Mandy this morning, another movie that's been on my radar for a while. I've been wanting to watch it. And if you watch a lot of YouTube about movies like I do, a lot of YouTubers talk about this movie all the time, and I'm on an Andrea Riseborough kick. So I thought I really need to see this movie because I like moody, colorful, atmospheric, slow burns with synth music over them. That's a formula that you can make a movie like that and put it in front of me, and I'm going to give it at least 3 stars pretty much every time. And Mandy may lean into more style than substance, but you got Nicolas Cage, you got Andrea Riseborough, you got the other actors are not slouches either. The plot is that Andrea Riseborough and Nick Cage, she's Mandy, he's Red. They live in the woods. They get kidnapped by a cult, and it goes from there. It's a very simple, like Lovecraftian horror, as it's called. There are really drug-fueled, trippy sequences in this, but again, it's maybe not as trippy as I wanted it to be, maybe not as trippy as it thinks it is, but it was cool. I mean, I can't knock it too much, but if you like this kind of movie like I do, you'll probably enjoy it. So if you've been on the fence about it like I have, check it out if you like that kind of thing. Otherwise, just know it's a slow burn. I saw some Letterboxd reviews. Oh, I tried to watch this 5 times. It's so boring. It's like, okay, well, not all movies are for everyone. So that's that. Anyway, thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. What are some of your favorite movies you watched this week? I have a new episode of the 2 LPs in the podcast. We talked about Deftones and Voivod in our metal episode, which is on the playlist on my channel. Check it out. Thank you for watching.